are these people?
So this story, you and Indy kind of covered in passing on How Do We Miss That Sunday. So, and after talking to Indy, and I had this on the back burner to talk about, and he said, since you guys didn't go through it, might as well, might as well do it here. And after reading it, I definitely do agree. I think mostly because people have forgotten that Cop City is still a thing. It's still pretty much a thing. If anything, it's going to be more of a thing if we're not careful. And given that we're now in the age of Trump Part Dos, and we saw what he was able to do as far as militarizing the police against the populace, I'm just going to make this prediction, like, depending on what uprisings there might be within the next 4 years, what we saw during the George Floyd protests in particular, I think is just the beginning. I would imagine it's going to be a lot worse. And you can thank Joe Biden for that. So what do I mean for that? And actually, what do I mean by this title, 40 Acres of Horse Pasture? That's actually a quote from, actually I have to pull her name. Move forward. There we go. Elizabeth Voss from Consortium News writes, and it kind of connects to our first segment that we talked about regarding, Benin and reparations for descendants of slaves who want to obtain citizenship. So I think it's kind of fitting that we kind of talk reparations here, but in a different way in regarding the police, regarding 40 Acres and a Mule.
Yep.
But she writes, cop cities lead U.S. buildup in police training bases. So Elizabeth Voss reports on a vast law enforcement training facility in Atlanta that defies the defund police movement and sets the stage for Israel-linked militarized policing across the U.S. So we've talked about this in various stories throughout last year, but I think if you're going to look at one segment, this is probably the one because this is the most concise. And it kind of goes over everything that we discussed regarding Cop City and all the other Cop Cities and the issues around policing in relation to Cop City within the last year. So show this to your friends. So Elizabeth writes, after years of intense opposition that left one protester riddled by police bullets, Atlanta's so-called Cop City is set to begin operations in the next few weeks. So, basically they've been protesting against this in Atlanta for like the last year. The city basically doesn't give a fuck, and they're like, we're going for it anyway. So the city's police chief hosted a tour of the campus last week, and training programs are expected to start during the first quarter of this year, 2025. The Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, as it is officially known, is an 85-acre campus with a price tag of at least $100 million and another $1.7 million recently approved by Atlanta City Council for its security. I mean, no money for transportation, which I go to Atlanta frequently, which sucks. No housing, education, there are better things to spend city funding, and they're building this facility for police to weaponize against the lower income communities in Atlanta. Okay. Most infamously, it includes a mock city for which the site gained its Cop City nickname for real-world training that includes a convenience store, two-story house, apartment, and commercial-style building. There's also a military vet training center, leadership institute, lab to develop and test technological innovations, training field, 12-acre emergency vehicle operations course. It also comes with burn towers, a shooting range, horse stalls, police dog kennels, and training grounds, and 40 acres of horse pasture, according to a video published by the Atlanta Police Foundation and the foundation's website. So
yeah, they're all horse girls, the cops.
Right. So that's kind of a crack at the 40 acres and a mule quote. regarding reparations. Funny how now in this, the horse is getting the acres and not the people, Black people that deserve it, which I think is kind of fitting and also kind of like a.
Well, we've talked about this specific, like, I think we talked about the one that was supposedly going to happen in Baltimore too, right? That was very similar.
Oh no, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah. So
we're gonna get to that. So yeah, if you can zoom in, please.
Yes, sir.
Atlanta's Cop City site was designated in 2021, the year after a white Minneapolis police officer named Frederick Chauvin asphyxiated a Black man named George Floyd by kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Chauvin's murder of Floyd after a series of high-profile police killings of Black Americans kicked the growing Black Lives Matter movement into high gear, causing what has been described as one of the largest social movements in U.S. history, with some protests extending internationally, which we all remember back in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
The wave of demonstrations during the summer of 2020 shone a spotlight on our greater harm that police cause Black people, who are more than 3 times as likely to be killed by police, according to a survey by Harvard University. Protesters' calls to defund and abolish the police needed policing reforms efforts in several states. At the federal level, however, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act has stalled, which, shout out to RBN, I know they've talked a lot about this a lot, but it's shit.
Mm-hmm.
Really doesn't do much, if anything. And while the wave of protests in 2020 helped expose the threat that police pose to the overall population in the U.S., they did not succeed in protecting Americans from deadly police violence. In 2024, police killed civilians at the highest rate in a decade, according to the collaborative research group Mapping Police Violence, which is funny because we, at least what I've been seeing like online, especially within the last year, definitely some articles that police killing civilians is down. So this is saying it's gone up and more within the last decade, which I think is kind of interesting. Okay, zoom back in. In Atlanta, Jasmine Burnett, a political organizer, told Prism that demands of defunding the police and investing in community programs really scared city council members, scared the executives and the elites in the city. And that's when they really began to put their foot on the gas to get this Cop City project moving.
Yep.
Oh, did I cut? Moving forward.
Forward.
Yeah, I thought I cut it wrong. That pro-policing backlash to Black Lives Matter in Georgia appears to be occurring in many other parts of the U.S. In 2022, 2 years after the Black Lives Matter wave of demonstrations, police budgets were increasing year over year, according to a news analysis of the budgets for more than 100 law enforcement agencies across the country. Next year, Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed, the city's $230 million policing budget reportedly represents a 6% increase from this year. So, Reef, can I ask you a question? Who?
Oh, I guess.
What?
I said no.
Oh no. So who was, I believe, the mayor of Minneapolis?
I think it's that. Which one was it? Mayor of Minneapolis.
Don't think too hard. Don't think too hard.
I'm letting Google think for me. It wasn't Jacob.
No, I said mayor. But we had a certain
during Floyd
presidential candidate. But we had a certain presidential candidate who chose her running mate, who is from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Mr. Tim Walz, who everyone was praising over how progressive he was.
Right.
But yet, you know, he essentially funded the police more, or at least was one of the assholes who helped to fund the police more in Minneapolis. And that's not unique to Minneapolis of itself, like other blue cities did as well. Like DC has, New York has, Chicago has, like all the major cities that you can think of have increased their police budgets. So So again, yeah. So when we talk about how, you know, I know like there's a lot of people in our space who've said this a lot, you know, how Joe Biden has essentially, you know, they've given the police more money, and now Trump is going to take advantage of that by whooping us essentially within the next couple of weeks. So who's the greater evil here? So Renee Johnston, co-host of Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media, had been tracking steady interest and investment in police facilities across the country since 2020. So this is Indy tweeted this out. So
the actual one.
So I won't show the PDF.
It's not,
but it's not. If you go to the
on.
article, you don't need to.
How about this?
Because this picture kind of shares this. So yeah,
this
better.
is the actual interactive map, right?
Right.
So we can look at things. So it's like, you know, let me zoom these a bit. Where it's like green is planning assessment, orange is approved for construction, red is under construction, and then blue is facility open. Right?
Right. So basically this means there is a cop city in some sort of progress being built or planned pretty much in almost every single state.
Yeah.
So
which these are going to be right near cities, I imagine. So
right.
You know.
So you can see obviously on the east, there's a lot more concentration of them under construction right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of these cities, I would argue, have probably a lot of or low income / Black communities within that.
Here's Baltimore, 330 million.
Yep.
Right. Newcastle, 25 million. So 1.2 acres is what they got.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's literally. I'll link this in chat for people who want to go through each one. So over in Lacey, approved 43.7 million. And they got 2 facilities. So I'll link this in chat for people who want to like go through and check near their cities and stuff.
Right.
But yeah. So that's that. Back to this.
So, yeah. Wait, did I skip? No, I didn't. U.S. President Joe Biden was bullish about the police during his abortive re-election campaign earlier this year when he published a White House fact sheet tuning the administration's crime crackdown. More than 1,000 communities across the country have invested over $15 billion to keep their communities safe and prevent crime, the fact sheet posted. The president's budget also funds his Safer America plan, including providing for hiring 100,000 additional police officers for effective, accountable community policing.
Yeah.
Right. Johnson said she produced her PDF spreadsheet to inform activists concerning about an intensifying police presence in their local communities. Nationally, groups are organizing in multiple cities and states. There were some national meetings this summer, and a national coalition has formed in hopes of creating shared processes and resources, Johnson told Consortium News by email. Her spreadsheet includes 83 projects of various sizes and in different stages that we just showed, from proposal to completion in nearly every U.S. state except Wyoming at the time of this writing. Some of the projects are as seemingly innocuous as a 23,000 square foot public safety center in Chisholm, Minnesota, that makes no mention of police training and includes a fire hall to replace one built during the days of horses and buggies, as well as housing emergency services and the police department on one site. But a few of the projects on Johnson's radar are even bigger than Cop City, Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
The most expensive is a $415 million project underway on state property near maximum security prison in Nashville, Tennessee, which has broken ground on a 600-acre site and will reportedly house offices of the State Departments of Correction and State Department of Safety and Homeland Security, along with training facilities for state troopers and officers, including dorms, a driving track, and police dog kennels. Another behemoth is envisioned for Baltimore. We have talked about Baltimore, I think in May, if I remember correctly, or like in the spring.
Yeah.
At a projected cost of at least $330 million, it could include an Atlanta cop-style tactical village, according to news reports. The modernization and expansion of a police academy in Hershey, Pennsylvania, now under construction, is estimated at $300 million and will include a tactical village and other elements similar to Atlanta's police trainings. In New York City, a $225 million police training facility was announced this year. This is where your money is going to, folks. Zoom in. Coming a year after the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement, the announcement of the Atlanta Training Center in 2021 sparked immediate protests, which became the Stop Cop City and Defend the Atlanta Forest movements. Activists referring to themselves as forest defenders began occupying the South River Forest, part of the land designated to become Cop City in late 2021, with some living in tree houses full-time for months. The occupation of the forest was meant to resist both the authoritarian implications of such a massive police training campus and the environmental damage the facility reported poses to an area that has been called one of the lungs of Atlanta. The site's firing range alone could be a potential source of heavy metal contamination. The looming specter of environmental damage led to lawsuits by local environmental organizations. The overall protest movement against the campus has been decentralized and leaderless, with some hopeful that the land might one day be returned to the Muscovy people. The occupation of the forest saw an aggressive response from Georgia's authorities that escalated over time and included heavy police surveillance verging on harassment. 8 protesters were arrested in May 2022 as police forces attempted to clear activists from the area. On December 13th that year, 5 protesters were arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. It sound familiar? Like,
yep. Yes, it does.
I mean, don't do what they want. Terrorism. They would not be the last. On January 18, 2023, an early morning police action was against the forest defenders brought the killing of Manuel Paez Tehran, who went by Tortuguita and was shot 57 times. The 26-year-old was sitting down cross-legged with hands raised when shot, according to an autopsy. The family of Tehran recently filed a federal lawsuit against 3 of the officers involved in the killing, claiming that they breached Tehran's 4th and First Amendment rights.
The person we should talk to about that is I need to reach out to Keith McHenry.
Okay.
He's a Food Not Bombs guy, and I know Tortuguita was Tallahassee Food Not Bombs. So that would be a useful thing to like talk to him about, and I'm sure he's definitely protested Cop City stuff for a whole long time. So we might reach out to him, and he's already talked to him.
Okay,
that should be doable.
All right. So who is behind Cop City? The Atlanta Police Foundation, a nonprofit organization formed in 2003, is a principal funder of the Cop City project. As an NGO, it is not accountable to public oversight figures.
Yeah.
The AAPF is instead legally accountable to a board of directors who include powerful corporate players. So keep this in mind the next time you venture or pay for these things.
Home Depot,
CEOs
Delta
of
Airlines.
Waffle House,
yeah,
and the Atlanta Hawks, VPs from the Home Depot and Delta Airlines, and members of Atlanta's ruling class, as a 2022 report by the New Yorker details. Cox Enterprises, a media conglomerate based in Atlanta that owns the city's largest newspaper, the Journal-Constitution, which has run editorials in favor of the project, of course, is among top cities' corporate donors. Fox CEO Alex Taylor is the chair of fundraising for the training facility, according to the same New Yorker article.
Speaking of Atlanta's elite,
feel free to
hey, homeboys in the rap industry in Atlanta, the hell you doing? I thought it was fuck the police coming straight from the underground. Where you at? You know,
they don't care.
Some of them probably do, but you know, right. Killer Mike, any of those guys.
My cousin lives there now, and he got married last year. So I went to Atlanta, I think like 5 or 6 times within the last year, helping him with wedding stuff. And look, I was there for a significant amount of time. There was only one instance where, my cousins and I would stop when we were having lunch, who, they were doing, like, a couple of protesters were asking for signatures regarding not to fund Cop City, which I told my cousins, you better sign that shit. But other than that, I haven't heard or seen much of anything regarding, like, protests, and that makes sense because they're trying to, lessen the blow right now. But I haven't heard anyone, like any celebrities necessarily, talking about this. I haven't heard anyone who, like, especially coming off of George Floyd, who claimed to care about Black lives, has said shit about this. So again, the establishment has done a good job to, like, we talk about this in the space, is that, they come in, the establishment comes in and infiltrates a lot of these movements, like they did with Black Lives Matter, to basically get done what they need to do. And as I said, Joe Biden set up what Trump is going to exploit to his benefit, and people are going to get mad at Trump. And so remember this. And again, if you're going to bookmark any of our segments, bookmark this one, because all of this and what will happen within the next few years, depending, on how any protests that pop off, is going to be linked to Joe Biden for his, for pushing the police state, for giving more money to police, that they're actually building more cop cities probably in your state. And Trump is going to, as I said, will use that to exploit that in terms of protecting himself as well as his buddies, so to speak. And for all the people who kind of claim, like, we shouldn't give a shit about Israel, we shouldn't give a shit about what's going on in Gaza over there. And I know a lot of people were talking about a certain, I don't want to give this guy any promo, but a certain influencer, like, who essentially got caught, in terms of him, like, bad-mouthing AOC and other, people in Congress. People are like, oh, well, why do we have to care about Gaza, what's happening with Israel? I'm about to read you why you should. The Atlanta Police Foundation is also a central point of connection between Cop City and pro-Israel interests. As Eric Sudman reported for TruthOut in July, the project is expected to deepen a policing ecosphere in Atlanta with close ties to Israeli forces that oppress Palestinians. What does that mean? That Israel-linked ecosphere has a lot to do with the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange Program. Based at Georgia State University, GLEE has long facilitated trips for law enforcement to Israel and other countries. As 11 Alive reports, for more than 3 decades, law enforcement leaders from around the metro have traveled to Israel to train officers there on best practices in community policing and homeland security. Similar programs outside Georgia facilitate training in Israel with or without Israeli personnel, including exchanges run by the Anti-Defamation League and the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, known as JINSA. I mean, what more do we need to say? So you're worried about the cops? You worry about the cops? This is why you should care about what's happening in Gaza. Because these police are going over to Israel to be trained to kick your ass.
Mm-hmm.
So as we say, like as you said in a quote with Malcolm X, what's happening in Mississippi, what's happening in the Congo. If you understand what's happening here, you need to understand. And this is why I get so mad with Black folks who kind of like, we shouldn't give a shit. You will give a shit when the cops will come to your door and possibly kill you or someone that you love because they're trained by the very people that you claim that we shouldn't give a damn.
Yeah.
This is why you should care. And the fact, and it's funny, I've been watching like the algorithm, like, recommended to me like a photojournalist who's based in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Who talks a lot about public transportation in Baltimore and how essentially like there's only one subway line in Baltimore at this current moment. There was plans for several of them, but you know how white people are in terms of, oh, we don't want Black people, possibly infiltrating our neighborhoods and lowering our, price values of our homes. So long story short, these, a lot of these public transportation, like these metro lines that in a lot of ways would benefit the low income communities, especially like many of them do not have cars and they have to rely on buses. I'm sure you see this like where you are too, like have to rely on public transportation, which is crap, which is often like a bus that doesn't run very often, but that's often like the cheap solution in terms of, trying to give people a way to get around, if that at all, versus building the infrastructure necessary to, have people have better access to the things that they need to do, but they don't want to do that. But they want to go ahead and build more cop cities in the guise of protecting the community. No, it's to protect the white people.
Yes.
Right.
The rich.
The rich. So that's just kind of an observation I made just over the weekend, how Baltimore is refusing to essentially build the public transit infrastructure it needs in order for, for there to be more equity, across class lines in the city. But you're going to build a cop city, which I believe is close to Morgan State University, if I remember correctly. Like, which is in a predominantly Black neighborhood, by the way. So what does that tell you? We can't build you trains, but we can build you a cop facility. So, so
he who
and
controls
again,
the spice controls the universe.
And I mean, and these are led by Democratic mayors. So, so you can talk about Trump, you can talk about the Republican Party all you want, but you have to look on the local level too and see how the Democrat-led leaders that you have are fucking you over as well. If probably if not more so. Anyway, went off on a tangent, but I not really digress. But
you would never do that.
But again, it's just the idea of like, like everything is connected, folks. Like, this is why you need to be so concerned about Israel, because they're using the same tactics that they use. And we've, talked about this extensively on this channel in terms of the type of torture that they use on the Palestinians. They will not be opposed to doing that to you too. And they can get away with it.
The Malcolm quote I read earlier segment. We can't understand what's going on in Mississippi if we don't understand what's going on in the Congo, and you can't understand what's going on in the Congo unless you understand what's going on in Mississippi. And you can't understand what's going on in Mississippi if you... We could just do that infinitely if you want for the next couple hours.
Right.
But anyway.
Let me finish this up. these programs, these Israeli exchange programs, essentially, were largely created after 9/11 for U.S. law enforcement to receive counterterrorism training from Israeli authorities, thanks to the latter's experience in brutally suppressing Palestinians. Organizations such as Jewish Voices for Peace and others contend that such exchanges have helped militarize U.S. police forces. When training in Israel, U.S. police delegates witnessed live demonstrations of repressive violence in real time, in protests across the West Bank, patrols in East Jerusalem, and visits to the Gaza border. Iran Irati, executive director of researching the American-Israeli alliance, told Al Jazeera in 2020. In 2020, hacktivists further documented strong ties between U.S. law enforcement and Israel, as well as policing links with U.S.-based organizations like the ATL. Those who support the Police Training Center in Atlanta argued that it will include de-escalation techniques. In addition to the focus on tactical training, the PSTC will emphasize cultural awareness, community knowledge, and a variety of citizen concerns that modern policing in a diverse city requires of an effective and trusting law enforcement agency, says the Atlanta Police Foundation's website, which is a whole bunch of bullshit. But given the size and scope of the Atlanta facility, along with its connection to Israeli training methods, such reassurances are not likely to assuage alarm at the prospect of a corporate-backed, militarized police force with tentacles beyond Georgia. Over 40% of the trainees at the Atlanta facility would come from outside the state, according to documents obtained by the Atlanta Community Press Collective. This center's mock city is reminiscent of urban warfare training performed by the military. The site's design, the extreme prosecutions, and apparently coercive surveillance of protesters speaks to the. Let me get that last word.
Oh, yeah.
Speaks to the treatment of the. That's right. Speaks to the treatment of the public as a potentially terroristic enemy. So.
Yep.
Very surprised that even in our space, we're not talking about this enough.
And
we should be worried. So shout out to Indy for at least setting me up to be able to talk about this more and go into it more in depth. But guys, like, I can't say this enough. Biden set you all up. He set you all up for Trump to kill you. Because you think you now, and this is going to be like the danger that a lot of these, online activists now, because it's Trump, will be more than willing to go out and protest, not knowing what has been happening, keeping your eyes blind to the idea of Biden funding all these cop cities across the country, that they'll be more than ready for you in terms of the better equipment that they have.
That in another 4 years, you're going to have people blaming Trump for those same problems when he's a symptom of the problem. You know?
So let's not get it twisted. Again, Democrats are the more effective evil. It's just that we don't make that connection right away. But again, given how Biden has been very much pro-police, funding them more, basically it's like, I don't give a fuck about, really, I don't give a fuck about George Floyd. He didn't say, he didn't say that in that way, but like, like, basically fuck defund the police movement. We're going to fund the police in the guise of safety. And now, and now, especially given the economy and how bad it is, like, unfortunately with people, like, I don't want to say it in this way, but it's like people are stealing and people are robbing people or whatever. And, like, everything is so much more expensive. Look, I think I mentioned this story to you, like, at some point within the last couple of months. Like, over the summer, like, I was just going grocery shopping. I happened to, like, 11 cops 11 cops arrested 2 people. 2. I'm like, this happened down the street from where I live over the summer. I'm like, what? Like, was it like you guys were bored that it needed like the whole gaggle of you? Like the one can take care of the 2? Depending what they were doing, I didn't care to find out, but it was like 11 cops for 2 people that got arrested. Like, so, you know, we're going to come in for a world of hurt. And this is what, and I'm scared because this is what it's not being talked about enough that people are not going to be ready for. And they're going to come in with a rude surprise within the next 4 years if they're going to protest. If you talk shit about Israel, if you say anything that goes against what the establishment wants, they're going to fuck us up.
Yeah. For sure.
So, you know, like I said, if you're going to share any of our segments tonight, share this one, especially to activists on the ground, need to be aware of this because not to say you shouldn't protest, but we need to be especially careful because given what I saw in 2020 and how ruthless these police can be, and they don't give a damn, you know, like I can only imagine it's going to be a lot worse within the next 4 years. And with the toys that they've been getting since then and will continue to get. So, yeah, it's scary to think about. But, you know, but stories like this are why we're demonetized. So if you want us to continue talking about stories like this, especially as we gear up for what will be hell for the next week, not to say it hasn't been already, but like more so, you can go to this, scan the QR code if you have a smartphone, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat, please type in !donate, all one word, and you're able to get the link from the chat, and you can donate to Ko-fi, to our network on Ko-fi from there. As little as $1 will be helpful. Anything helps in terms of helping us continue to bring you this very breaking content. And money-wise, if you're not doing so well, you can do these following things for free. Like our video, share our videos, subscribe to our channel, and make sure to leave a comment. What do you think about the potential of chaos in terms of the cop cities that being resurrected in your state? Let us know. And help us get to free K so we're able to bring more of this content to more of you all. And thank you for watching.